Good morning. How's everybody? Having a great conference? Woohoo! Oh, it was hectic yesterday. It was really busy. So props to the guys for the organising this. It's been a fantastic event this year. My name's... I'll get that. My name's Phil Lewis. I'm representing an organisation called Intersect, and I'll explain who Intersect are as part of my presentation. Can I get a show of hands? Who's heard of Cardano? Okay, keep your hands up, and keep it up if you use Cardano actively. Oh, we've still got a few hands up, that's good. Okay, so we've got people who know what it is, and we've got people who actually use Cardano. So I'm going to do a bit of an intro into Cardano just to kind of set the scene before explaining what the new era of Cardano that we're moving into is. So I'm going to do a what, why, and who of Cardano. Okay, so as part of the what is Cardano? So it's the first provably secure proof-of-stake UTXO smart contract blockchain, and that's a bit of a mouthful, I know. So I'll kind of try and break that down for you. So before I do that, I just want to reference an online figure in the Cardano community. His name's Ada Whale. He's got quite a following on Twitter. He's basically saying that a lot of people think that Cardano is a competitor to Ethereum, okay? But it's actually a bit of a mistake. It's actually what Bitcoin could have been. It's like Bitcoin 2.0 with smart contracts. It's taken inspiration from Ethereum, obviously, for some of the apps, but that's not what it was initially intended to be. Okay, so onto the proof of stake. So the consensus mechanism for Cardano is a novel consensus mechanism called Ouroboros. And this is designed to maximize decentralization of the network. You don't lock up your ADA. You don't have to lock it in a smart contract. It stays in your wallet the entire time. You can spend it whenever you want. Okay, and because of this feature, it means that at any point in time, there's usually between 60 and 80% of the ADA in circulation that's being staked, which is obviously what you want for a proof-of-stake blockchain. So there's no slashing, okay? Any bad behavior by a stake pool just means it gets reduced to rewards, but there's no actual slashing of the principal. It's also got liquid staking. And I've used the term true liquid staking here because liquid staking has been kind of hijacked as a term by other blockchain ecosystems. There's no derivative token that you get issued as part of staking. Like I said before, it's truly liquid. You can move it at any time. You can spend it at any time. And so the next part of the description that I said was it was a UTXO blockchain. So here it says extended UTXO. So what does that mean? What does extended UTXO mean? So people are probably familiar with what UTXO is. It was introduced by Bitcoin. It stands for unspent transaction output. So this is a very basic diagram that explains how that works. You've got your public key, and then you use your private key to sign a transaction to spend that output. That then also applies to scripts. Bitcoin has scripts, okay? You can have a multi-sig on Bitcoin, for example. And so the same principle works, except instead of it being a private key, there's some kind of redeemer that's used for unlocking those funds. So the extended part that Cardano introduced is it added 2 more bits to the UTXO. It added something called a datum, which is a little bit of data that accompanies each of the UTXOs. And this little bit of information allows smart contracts to be able to get access to some state, some information about the transaction that gives it more context, and it can actually use that for the logic of the smart contract. It also uses the context of the transaction, so it looks at all the inputs and all the outputs, and it uses that information to determine whether it's allowed to process the transaction or not. And obviously this is really valuable from a processing perspective because it's only focusing on the transaction. It doesn't have to look at anything else on the blockchain. So other blockchains use what's called a global state. So it has to be aware of everything that's happening on the blockchain. The extended UTXO only cares about the transaction that it's working on at that time. So we've talked about smart contracts. Obviously, being a UTXO blockchain, special smart contract language had to be created. It couldn't use Solidity for Ethereum. So a new language was created called Plutus. Now, this is a language that's based on a functional programming language called Haskell. And if there's any developers in the room, they're probably aware that functional programming is not a particularly popular programming methodology. So it's been quite difficult to get a lot of developers to participate in this process. Because of this type of programming, it means that it's a lot more trusted and safer than some of the other programming types. So I mentioned that it was difficult to get developers, and so as the community does, they decided that they were going to try and abstract away this complexity. So we've now got new programming languages that have come out to help bring more developers in. Aitken is a Rust-like language, and PluTS is a TypeScript language. And it just simplifies the programming of smart contracts on Cardano, and it's bringing in a lot more developers. Cardano has native tokens. So these are tokens that aren't issued through smart contracts. They're native to the chain. They operate exactly like transferring Bitcoin or like transferring ADA. You don't have to operate through a smart contract. Obviously, you can interact with smart contracts, but it's not required to be able to use tokens on Cardano. This is a great website. We've actually got this running on the booth over at the Insect booth at the moment, which just shows tokens going through different blocks and how you can have different tokens within the same transaction because of the fact that they're native. So that was the what. What about the why? So many people are aware of Cardano being a slow, scientifically researched blockchain. But the decision to take this approach was an important one because many people believe that if you're going to store billions of dollars worth of value on a blockchain, that you want to have some trust that it's going to not fail or that it's going to be secure. So yes, it's taken a long time for Cardano to come to fruition, but it's starting to see the rewards of that now. So not only has it been scientifically researched, but it uses something called formal methods for the development of the code, which is essentially creating a mathematical proof of the code execution. So I mentioned it's secure. Obviously, you know, again, wanting to secure lots of value, you want to make sure that it's not going to get hacked. And it's reliable. We've seen a few different blockchains go down recently. Cardano has never gone down, and it's the second longest running blockchain of any other blockchain. Bitcoin has only been up longer, and that's because obviously it's an older chain. And as of today, it's been up for 2,613 days without going down. And it's had attempts to take it down. A couple of months ago, there was an attack on the network that tried to take it down. But the developers jumped in and tried to find out what the issue was. Actually ended up taking some of the funds from the attacker because they'd poorly written their script. So it kind of backfired on them. So it was great. And of course, it's decentralized. Okay, so why is this important? Well, if it's not decentralized, it's Web 2. So, I mean, what are we doing? Okay. But there are obviously a variety of factors that determine what is considered to be decentralized. There's a lot of arguments online about what decentralization means. A common one is the number of validators. How many different stake pools are there? So this is an example of the distribution of stake pools for Cardano. As you can see, it's quite well distributed. But a better way of determining decentralization is, well, let's go back to science and actually measure it in a scientific way. So this is a new research department at the University of Edinburgh. They've started what's called the Edinburgh Decentralization Index. And they're creating measures of decentralization, and they're making all of their findings open. Anybody can challenge them. If they don't believe the way that they've recorded decentralization is fair, then they can criticize them and go through the peer review process, if you like. So you've now got this secure, reliable, decentralized blockchain, and because of all these characteristics, it's now starting to become very trusted. Okay, it's not just about sharing meme coins, it's about how can we do, I guess, reliable, trustworthy applications on the chain. And so here's a few examples of some of the institutions that have started to leverage Cardano. So the Dubai police just recently announced that they will be actually storing proofs of their ballistics on the Cardano blockchain. NASA just recently announced, I think it was last month, that they will be doing supply chain tracking for their parts using Cardano as the way to do that. So that means they're literally building rockets with Cardano, which is pretty cool. The Ministry of Education in Ethiopia, they did a project with Input Output Hong Kong to provide student identities that leverages the Cardano blockchain. So the idea here is that they will issue credentials for education qualifications, and the identities are grounded in the chain. And then finally, voting. There's been talk about some of the states in the US starting to look at blockchain, and they've looking at Cardano as the one that gives them that trust and confidence that they could do that in a secure way. So moving on to the who. So when Cardano was first started, there were 3 founding entities: Input Output, Cardano Foundation, and Emergo. And they've been building the community and the tech over the last few years. But soon the community came together around Cardano, and we have one of the strongest communities out of any of the chains. So much so that an organisation called Emblem, who do a brand intimacy rating, actually found Cardano as one of the highest engaged brands out of any blockchain, even higher than Bitcoin, I believe. I'm not sure where Bitcoin is on that list, but it's right up there with some of the big brands that people are aware of. But as part of this new era that I want to talk about is we're entering into an era of decentralized governance. So all of the changes that were being done to the chain leading up to this point were done by those founding entities. As part of this transition to a community-owned blockchain, we've introduced on-chain governance. But prior to getting into that, I just want to talk about some decentralized governance that's already been in place for a while. So people might be familiar with BIPs, Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, or EIPs for Ethereum. So Cardano has CIPs, and this has already been part of the Cardano ecosystem for some time, different developers contributing to proposed changes to the chain. And then also something called Project Catalyst. It's been running for a couple of years, and this is what's been considered the world's largest decentralized innovation engine. And this is essentially people put up proposals for business ideas or to create tooling, open source tooling, and ADA holders vote for which proposal they believe should receive the funding. The funding comes from the Cardano treasury. It's an on-chain treasury. Every transaction that occurs on Cardano, there's a fee, and part of that fee goes into an on-chain treasury that's locked. So here's just some numbers on the Project Catalyst to date. Well, we've got $90 million worth of funds issued. So if anybody is thinking about doing some kind of startup or education program or some kind of developer tooling, go to projectcatalyst.io and check it out, because it's a fantastic ecosystem, and there's been lots of great initiatives that have come out of it. So as part of this on-chain governance, it was decided that we needed 3 pillars. Institutions to manage the conversations off-chain, all the debates and discussions about what needed to go into the changes for the chain. Obviously, we needed some kind of constitutional representation and democratic consent. So we'll kind of go through these pillars. On the institution side, a new organisation was formed called Intersect, who I'm representing today, and we've got a booth over there. So the purpose of this organisation is it's a members-based organisation, which means that it's not-for-profit and it's owned by its members. Members come together in committees and working groups and have discussions about what the next things on the roadmap for Cardano should be, where we want to spend money. Now, Intersect and the members don't make the final decision. They'll just put a proposal forward for an on-chain vote. Ultimately, the larger community decides, but this is where all those conversations happen. And so those 3 founding entities I talked about before, they're members of Intersect as well. So they've not just kind of washed their hands and walked away. They've decided that they're going to contribute to this process through Intersect. So these are some of the governance roles for this on-chain governance process. So we've got delegated representatives, a constitutional committee, and I'll go into what these are. First, delegated representatives. So if you're an ADA holder, you can vote on decisions that are getting made. You can decide whether we want to make a parameter change or whether we want to upgrade to a new version of the node. But not everybody has that understanding, technical understanding. So this idea is about delegating your voting power. If you've got 1,000 ADA, you say, well, I'm not going to vote directly. I'm going to delegate that to somebody who I trust, who I think knows how to make the right decisions on my behalf. And so these are starting to form now. We're starting to get delegated representatives forming and attracting delegations so that they can participate in the voting. This is just a snapshot of a dashboard for GovTools, which is where you can actually go and delegate your ADA or register to become a DREP yourself, look at proposals that are being proposed. So the other side of this is a constitutional committee. So we didn't want just a free-for-all of, okay, we've got our delegated representatives and they're just going to go crazy putting all these different proposals in place. We wanted to ground it in some common set of values. So a constitution is being drafted, which is essentially the community agreeing how we want the ecosystem to be managed. If a proposal goes up on chain and it's determined that it's not compliant with the constitution, then it won't go through. Even if all the DREPs vote yes, the constitutional committee have the power to say no because it's not constitutional. So these are the entities that currently make up the constitutional committee. There'll be an election process to replace the constitutional committee next year. But as you can see, the founding entities intersect, and then 3 community elected organisations as well. This is just a link to the interim constitution at the moment. So if you're interested in having a read, it's about 9,500 words. So it's not overly light, but we're in the process right now, though, of drafting a new constitution. So we had workshops in over 60 locations around the world. And delegates from each of those workshops were elected to go to a constitutional convention in Argentina in 10 days from now. And one of our delegates is right down the front here, I see. So they're all going to get in a room to represent their local areas and hash out a new draft. Now, that doesn't mean that they've made the final decision. They still need to put that out to the community, and it'll go for an on-chain vote as far as whether that gets accepted. If it doesn't get accepted, then we put them back in a room and start again. So this is just a bit of a timeline as to how that's playing out. I mentioned the on-chain treasury. So this is where it starts to get exciting, because if we're going to fund our own development for the chain, we need to be able to draw funds out of this treasury. And right now, that's how much is in the treasury. So that's a pretty penny with the recent price movement of ADA. So obviously we want to make sure that we're managing this spending process carefully. We don't want a free-for-all. So we're doing a budget. Okay, so we have a budget committee within Intersect that's putting forward some suggested things that we should be spending on for 2025. Again, this is just a suggestion from the committee. The community still decides via an on-chain vote whether to accept that budget or not. So what's next? You know, we've got this decentralized governance worked out. We're moving forward. Things are getting good. The bull market's heating up. But what's next for Cardano? So layer 2s. Cardano was never designed to be a fast chain. It was designed to be a reliable, secure, decentralized chain. They were the most important characteristics. So now we're working on layer 2s. First one, Hydra. If you come to the Intersect booth, we've got a game running. It's called Hydra Doom. This is a layer 2 that runs the Doom game in this layer 2. Every frame of the game is a transaction in the layer 2, just to show how performant this layer 2 can be. And we've had multiple games running in the same layer 2 Hydra head. So we're getting up to thousands of TPS. So it's quite impressive, and there's going to be a Hydra Doom competition starting in December. I think there's $100,000 up for grabs. So if you know how to play Doom well, then get practicing. We've got another layer 2 project that's in the works called Midgard. So this is, people may be familiar with optimistic roll-ups on Ethereum. This is essentially the same thing. And then finally, we've got a zero-knowledge roll-up technology as well called ZK Fold. Now, all of these layer 2 technologies, they're slightly different to the equivalents on EVM chains because they benefit from the UTXO architecture. So because of our UTXO architecture, we don't have to be concerned about the entire chain. We can just take what gets sent into that layer 2 from the transactions, from those UTXOs that we talked about before. And it makes these layer 2s a lot more efficient than their equivalents on other chains. But interoperability is obviously a big thing. People are talking about cross-chain and this and, you know, having tokens all over the place. So Charles Hoskinson, some of you might have heard him speak yesterday. He talked about a partner chain technology and one of the new products that he's bringing out called Midnight. Okay, so the idea of a partner chain is slightly different from just a side chain or having tokens across multiple layer 1s. The idea of a partner chain is about both chains benefiting from each other in some way. So Midnight is putting forward the idea of bringing privacy to applications, okay? But it knows that it can't do everything. It knows that it can't do decentralization straight away. So it's partnering with Cardano because Cardano is very well decentralized. So Cardano brings the decentralization and Midnight brings the privacy. We've got a few other partner chains that are coming out. So World Mobile is a telecoms project that's putting out decentralized telecommunications. And then another one called Cerberus, which is a risk rating project. But probably the most exciting announcement from what I'm calling a partner chain, okay? Hey, you can fight me on it. It's Bitcoin as a partner chain, okay? So where's the partnership relationship here? Okay, what has Cardano got that Bitcoin needs? Okay, well, Cardano's got smart contracts. Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts. Bitcoin's got a lot of value. What is it, almost $2 trillion worth of value? Okay, so there's a good partnership relationship here for Bitcoin and Cardano. So Bitcoin OS last month announced that, I think it was at Bitcoin block number 853626, for anyone keeping track. They did the first verified ZK proof on Bitcoin, which proves this capability to have trustless. You don't need to have a third party or a multi-sig that locks up tokens to move it from one chain to another, which is obviously fantastic. We are all familiar with wrapped Bitcoin, but you're still trusting somebody to manage the original Bitcoin on your behalf. So this is a fantastic development, and we'll wait and see what happens next year. So the last, I guess, challenge for all blockchain ecosystems, we've now got the infrastructure in place. It's now about user experience. Okay, so what's happening in Cardano from a user experience? Well, we've got a project called Tokyo, a good Aussie project. Okay, they're building a mobile-first, what they're now calling a power dApp. It's not a wallet. It's a power dApp, and essentially it allows users to interact with different services across different chains, all from one interface. And I highly recommend you download this and give it a try. It's a fantastic user experience, and it's only just starting. And they believe, obviously unconfirmed, they believe they're the first application to do a token sale on both Cardano and Bitcoin at the same time. So part of their token sale was as a rune on Bitcoin, and part of it was as a Cardano native token. So just as a wrap up, this is my company. We do consulting for doing application development on Cardano. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in developing on Cardano, creating a project, we support from concept right through to launch. We've built custom marketplaces, staking platforms, token minting and claiming systems. So if you need anything like that, then we can help you out. Please get in touch. And finally, as we grow out this decentralized governance process, Intersect is growing. We have already launched in 2024 6 regional hubs around the world, which allows Intersect to focus in on specific needs for those regions. So we're looking to next year launch a Intersect Oceania hub to join those other 6. So this is just a form to sign up to express your interest in participating in Intersect as part of that Oceania hub once we launch. So please feel free. We've also got this QR code over at the stand as well if you don't get to scan it now. But that's it. Thank you, everybody.